Hi everyone, how are you doing so far? Nice to see you again. Well, we are at the lecture number 7. So we are almost at the half of the whole semester. Time is so fast. We talked about the counseling perspective, individual approach and group approach on the last lecture. And today we will talk about some different approach in helping way. The first one is the consultation. The second one is a supervision. So this is more professional way, but I hope and I believe this concept will help you to understand the counseling better in more comprehensive way. So if you look at the objective of lecture number 7, I put down 3 major objectives for today. The first one is the identify definition of consultation and supervision. So we'll talk about how these two concepts are different from counseling. So the consultation is triadic relationship and indirect service. I will explain that. And supervision is more extended and evaluative relationship between supervisor and supervisee. And also the triadic relationship and indirect service between consultant and consultee. So it's a little bit new term for you, but we will talk about that different concept. The second, describe characteristics of consultation and supervision model. We have talked about different theory in individual and group approach in terms of psychoanalytic and behavioral and cognitive and person-centered. But the textbooks is showing some different approach in consultation, so consultant-centered and system-centered. And also in supervision model, we will talk about 3 different models: developmental and orientation-specific and integrated model. And finally, we will talk about some characteristics of different theories in consultation. It's about the same as the theories that we reviewed in individual and group counseling. So today we'll talk about the consultation first. I put down the definition of consultation from the textbook here. Let's take a look at the definition. The consultation is a process in which a human service professional, usually counselor, assists a consultee with a work-related problem. Okay, there's a new term, is a consultee. Consultee is different from the client. With a client system, with the goal of helping the consultee and the client system in some special way. Let's take a look at this picture here. So that's why it's called a triadic relationship. You see the triangle here, right? We usually talked about the relationship between helping profession and a client, like this way. This is more counseling perspective. In this case, we call this person counselor. But if we have another person, in this case, it's called the consultee. Okay, and actually, the consultee interact with the client. For example, in this case, maybe a consultee. Let's think about some example. Consultee may be a teacher. And client is just a student, okay? Student with have you heard about the ADHD? Is one of the disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This disorder, if someone has this disorder, they may show some inattentiveness, and it's hard to concentrate on a task and they are very hyperactive and very impulsive. So if we have a teacher who is very concerned about a student with ADHD because of the student's behavior, is very hyperactive in the classroom, is frequently off task, and the student is not really paying attention to what the teacher say, and show lots of disruptive behavior in the classroom. So the teacher has lots of concern about the student, and so the teacher asks you as a counselor, okay, how can I help this student in my classroom? So do you see that, triadic relationship? So this person was the first person who initiated the consultation relationship, because the consultee has a client, in this case a client or client-related, some work-related situation. So the consultee wanted to get some help and assistance from another person here. It's called the consultant, okay? So the counselor works as a consultant in this case. That is the definition of the consultation. So do you see the triadic relationship? So consultant help client, not directly. That's why I put some different line here, okay? Actually, the service goes through this way. Consultant provides service to consultee because, the consultee, in this case, a teacher asks some consultation, and counselor provided some suggestion or alternative or solution to teacher, and then teacher will apply that information and that advice to the client. So actually the flow of service goes through this way. That's why it's called indirect service. Counseling is more direct relationship between client and counselor, but consultation provides service through consultee. That's why it's an indirect service. So if I read the consultation definition again, I hope it will clarify your understanding what the consultation is. A process in which a human service professional assists a consultee with a work-related problem with the client system, with the goal of helping the consultee and the client system. So actually consultant help in dual way. So help the consultee as well as the client system in a special way. The special way in this case means in triadic relationship and indirect service. In the next slide, we will talk about the different model. The first model is focused on consultee this way, okay? Some direct the flow of the service. The second model, system-centered, how to empower the consultant themselves. So we will talk about that models. So current model of the consultation. The first one is a consultant center. So I ask you to keep in your mind about that, the figure, that triadic relationship. The first one is consultant center. In this case, consultant is a kind of expert. So consultee asks you a consultation, and you as a consultant provide just a solution and advice and some suggestion. It's a more prescriptive consultant. Prescriptive and prescription is a term that is used in medical setting. It's a kind of the doctor and patient relationship. The patient has a problem, and the doctor prescribes a medication. So, okay, you need to take this pill, 3 times a day, and you will get over. So that type of situation is a consultant center. So when consultee asks them consultation, you just give the solution like a medical pill. And trainer and educator, it also is in the same line. So trainer and educator, you instruct them, you teach them, you provide education to them based on your professional expertise. So that is more consultant center. So the solution comes out of you. The second one is the system center. It's different. The consultant center is just giving the solution, but the system center try to empower the consultee so that the consultee will work effectively in the future. It's not only giving the solution, it's not only giving the pill, it's a way of helping consultee. So negotiator or facilitator, because consultee has some problem with clients or some other person, so you want to work as a negotiator and facilitator. You don't want to give a solution. You want to work together. You just to facilitate their conflict resolution. You want to work as a collaborator. You want to be involved in the situation, but you are not the person who just gives the answer. The third one is process-oriented. Compared to the system, this maybe is more content-oriented. So you have your own content that you want to give to solve the problem, but you don't suggest the content. You just work, you just facilitate the whole process. So actually, consultee has the responsibility of helping the problem. You see the difference? Consultant has the responsibility in this case, but in this case, consultant just work as a facilitator. So ultimately, consultee has the responsibility of resolving the problem. So I wanted to contrast the two different theory, two different model here. And stage. Well, we have talked about different stage in individual approach. In stage 5, like rapport building and problem identification and goal setting and investigation, intervention strategies and termination. We also talked about 4 different stages in group setting. There were initial and transitional and working and closer work. And stage of consultation is in the same line. Okay? However, there's some difference. For example, pre-entry. Pre-entry means it is a kind of initial contact by consultee. Okay? The case that I introduced, the teacher had a situation with the student with ADHD. And the teacher may initiate the relationship with you. Okay, I have a student with ADHD and I'm so concerned about him and types of things. So in this case, pre-entry is just initiating of the relationship. And then you have to meet officially with the consultee to talk about 2 things. The first one is a contract. The contract is official, usually documentation, but not always. Okay, you want to identify and you want to describe, okay, I would work as a consultant in this way. My role would be this and this and this, and you would need to help me in this and this and this. So you have to make an agreement with consultee. You want to clarify and limitation and scope of your role as a consultant while working with consultee. So that is a contract. If you work as a professional consultant, you may want to even put down, how much I would make for your consultation, how long I'm going to work as a consultant for you. All type of specific information you can put down as a contract. And you don't have to make a documentation type of contract. You can also make a verbal contract, kind of agreement between a consultant and consultee. And that is related to like a building relationship, right? But it's different because in the individual approach, we talked about the relationship between counselor and client. That is direct therapeutic relationship. But this type of contract is a relationship between consultant and consultee, and actually there's another person, client. So that's why it's called a different way, is a contract. Okay? And problem exploration, so based on the consultee's statement, you want to identify what the problem is. So that is the next step. Once you identify and explore the problem, you want to gather some information. You want to interview with someone else. You want to get some other documentation to identify and problem confirmation. Oh, this is what the consultee said, and I agree with the consultee. And this is what the consultee said, but I don't think this is the case because, based on this information. So you want to make a judgment. In order to better judgment, you have to gather much more information. Based on that information, you want to set the goal, like a regular counseling procedure. And then this is the equivalent to the stage of stage 4 in the individual approach. You want to develop and generate a strategy and intervention to solve the problem. That was step 4. And finally, after implementing your consultation, you want to evaluate which solution and which intervention worked well, and which one didn't really work well. So you want to evaluate for the better intervention in the future. And then after finishing evaluation process, you may want to terminate. So these are the whole procedure. And I'm sure you see some pattern in counseling, group counseling, and consultation, the whole stage. And I also encourage you to read in more detail by reading our textbook. For theory again, okay, we reviewed several times person-centered. We focus on the client, the potential and their capability. In this case, just switch, just replace the client with consultee. So when we work together with consultee, we want to empower, we want to help the consultee so that consultee enhance their ability of the solving their situation. Gestalt. Well, I mentioned briefly the characteristic of Gestalt theory in the counseling, the theory lecture. The Gestalt stress the awareness, and also the Gestalt theory stress phenomenological experience of here and now. So when we work together with consultee, we can help the consultee to express themselves, and while helping them, we can give many, we can ask many other questions or even role play, so that consultee express what they feel in the relationship with the consultant. So they may have some different thought. Oh, I have never thought about this before. Or you can change the role as well. So we want to increase their different insight and awareness. So that is a Gestalt. And learning theory is another expression of the same as like a behavioral approach. So we want to provide a specific solution for the consultant. Psychoanalytic, that's the same way. We want to look at the consultee's problem. Consultee talked about the client, the problem. But we have to think about from this perspective, actually, the problem is not from the client, it's the consultee themselves. They may transfer their past experience, their lifestyle, their pattern to the client. That's why they ask a question to you. so we can analyze and interpret the consultee's relationship with client from this psychoanalytic perspective. It was interesting that I see the chaos theory, that is a scientific theory in this consultation, is pretty new to me as well. And the chaos theory is one of the scientific theory. It says, for example, like a dropping of leaves in China would affect the weather change in other side of the globe. I think you may hear this type of the phrase before. Sometimes it's called the butterfly effect. If we have a butterfly, that small change of flow of air will impact on like a turmoil and typhoon types of big wind in the other side. Anyway, the core thing of the chaos theory is there are so many different things are connected to each other. And if we change one thing, and that will change another thing which is connected the first one, like a ripple effect. And then that will impact and result in different consequence. And finally, we will experience a whole unexpected or unpredictable change. So based on the chaos theory, when we work as a consultant, we want to look at the whole situation in very complex and complicated structure, and we want to change a certain point, a certain part of the situation. And we believe that change will result in changing another section of the whole situation. Okay? That is the major, the understanding of the chaos theory. So we have 5 different theories in the textbook. And the next one is a supervision. Supervision is a professional term in counseling. I just put down the definition of supervision here. Let's take a look at first. An extended and evaluative interpersonal relationship in which a senior member of a profession, in this case, a senior member of the profession enhance the professional skills of a junior person, thereby assuring quality service to client. So in this case, a senior person is called supervisor, and junior person is supervisee. And supervisee, so supervisor helps supervisee, and supervisee help the client. We usually see this relationship in the training program. For example, when I was in a master program or even doctoral program, I was a student. But I was also practicing counseling skills in counseling center as a part of the requirement of the program. So for the master program, I worked at the school, public school, as it's called a practicum student or internship student. When I worked in the doctoral program, I worked at the community counseling center. I also worked as a, the practicum and internship student anyway. So I was a supervisee in this case because I met client. I helped the client. I had my client. Ewha Women's University has a counseling service center at the Student Union building. And I was working like that center, so I met my client. My client were the student, college student. However, I was in the training. So my skills and techniques were not sufficient, and I wanted to enhance and I wanted to increase my expertise by getting some service from my professor. He was my supervisor in this case. Okay? So this relationship is different from the consultation. Let's take a look at it again. This is evaluative interpersonal relationship. So usually when I provide the counseling service to the client. I usually work at the one-way meter room. Are you familiar with that? I'm working with the client. There is a one big meter on the side of the whole, the room, and actually the other side of the meter there is a camera, and the camera is always recording my session with the client. So when I finished my session, I take that videotape to my professor's office, and we put the tape in the machine, and we watch together. Oh, this is you did a good job this part, but you should have asked this type question in this section. So that is more evaluative relationship, because I am getting feedback from supervisor about the work. So in this case, I'm getting service from the senior member, in this case supervisor, because the goal for this supervision relationship is the client, thereby assuring quality services to the client. Okay, so this is the supervision. This is not only the counseling, but also teacher training program as well. When we send the student in the College of Education to the field experience, it's called 교생 실습. They also have their own supervisor in their classroom. After teaching and after developing lesson plan, and they see each other, after school, they look at sometimes video clip and their lesson plan to get some feedback. That is a supervision, and that's another relationship in counseling. So the next one is models of supervision. This is the final slide we want to learn today. The first one is developmental model. Is IDM, is an integrated developmental model, is one of the famous model in this approach. This one assumes that supervisee they develop their skills as time goes on. If you look at this figure here, you see three different criteria. The first one, dependency. At the first level, in the beginning of the relationship, in the supervision here, you see a high level of dependency, because supervisee is not confident about their skill. So the supervisee is very dependent on supervisor's suggestion and feedback. They wanted to learn, they wanted to help the client, so that's why the motivation is still high here. Okay, and however, their self and other awareness, that is more professional related issue, is relatively low. So at the first level, in the beginning of the supervision relationship, consultee is showing this type of characteristic. However, as time goes on, dependency level is going down, because they have more experience, they are getting more feedback from the supervisor, so they gain more confidence, they're less dependent on supervisor. Motivation maybe get down, like a transitional period, maybe discouraged, or some, overwhelmed by the client. But finally, they will get over in the long run. And their professional expertise, such as self-awareness and other awareness, will be increased anyway. So in this developmental model, it assumed that supervisee experience and they go through different stages of development. So the supervisor wanted to help based on their developmental level. For example, if they are at the level 1, supervisor want to increase more support because they are very dependent. They are not confident. Okay. However, at the last stage, the supervisor may want to provide more and encourage consultee be more independent. So they differentiated some different supervision style. and orientation specific model, but this is more consultant centered approach. So supervisor embodies a specific theoretical orientation, and supervisor suggests a way of working with client. So if you compare these two models with the previous model comparison, this is more related with the system, centered approach, because we wanted to enhance the consultee's relationship. But this one, orientation specific model, in this supervision model is close to the consultant centered the model in consultation. So supervisor suggests, this approach was wrong. You need to follow this way. You have to go through this step. So they just provide some suggestion. The final one, which is the most popular approach, integrated model. So it integrates all different approach. Sometimes supervisor work as a teacher, and also sometimes they work as a counselor. So when they work with the supervisee, sometimes they just listen to supervisee's concern, like personal concern even. And then sometimes they work as a consultant. So supervisor provides some suggestion and alternative solution and advice. So they use like different mode. That is a meta theory model. And interpersonal process recall, IPR, is one of the integrated model. That is pretty common supervision model right now. For example, as I said, after finish the session with the client, I bring the video clip and watch the tape with the supervisor, and just talk with each other with supervisor and stop it, and exchange the feedback, and I share my concern, and a certain point supervisor work as a teacher's role, and sometimes counselor's role, and change the consultant's role. It's very mixed the relationship between supervisor and supervisee. So today we talked about some different approach in helping. We have talked about the counseling so far, but today we talked about the consultation. Consultation is an indirect service, right? It's also a triadic relationship. So we provide service through consultee to the client. And we also talked about a different model, and also we learned some different relationship. It's called supervision. There is a supervisor, supervisee, and client. So this relationship is extended and evaluated relationship in order to assure the quality of service to the client. So next week we will talk about some development issue, because when we work with the client, we want to apply some developmental understanding. So we will the theoretical foundation. We will go back some theory-oriented the content next week. So I hope you enjoyed this the lecture today. I always encourage you to read your textbook in more detail, and if you have any question, please be an active learner. So by searching for some other information and related information in the internet, or to go to the library and some other references. And if you still are not sure, please post your question to our website. So see you next week then.